good coaches understand that we all need good coaching.
Your conscious awareness that we are, sentient human beings and we do have choice.
So that's the advantage of a coach or consultant coming in. They can see those things.
Awareness is this beautiful, peaceful, loving undercurrent.
You should help people tell their stories.
That real human connection has never been any more important.
The work is ongoing.
Hey everybody! There's already fun going on in the comments here. I will often have only Restream open when we're doing this, so that there's no like competition for resources. But I usually stream LinkedIn at least just to make sure we've gone live. And Nadine somehow ended up in the wrong place last week commenting, so I had to like run over there and comment because Nadine, I'm glad you made it. I'm glad you're here. Amber, hi. Rob, nice to see you. Guys, I'm in my late 40s. I got to use my glasses sometimes. Everybody, welcome. It is Wednesday. It is Tilted Bench. This is episode 25. With me today is Kate Turner. Kate, I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Kate is my last guest for this season. I do have a special guest next week, but it's somebody coming back. So Kate is my last unique guest, and I'm glad she said yes. For those of you who don't know already, this is a show where we talk about, hey Joa, where we talk about coaching, what it is, what it does, why it works, why it's important. And today with me is Kate Turner. Thanks, Kate. Welcome to the show. Can you kick us off by telling us a little bit about you and what you do?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I know we've chatted for a long time over LinkedIn. It's a great chance to connect face to face. I am a holistic coach for people who are facing change. I help them to make the transitions that they need to find contentment or fulfillment. And I do that both in one-on-one and group settings. My background is really in sales and marketing, focused in the technology sector. And what got me into coaching was I just love working with people and understanding what makes them tick and what they want and helping them get all of the things that they seek.
Can you kind of quickly tell us a little bit of that story about how you moved over to being a coach?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I started out with a focus I wanted to be a psychologist. And then I learned that I didn't really like focusing on problems. I liked focusing on solutions, which ultimately led me to get a degree in sales. And I started out selling TV ads, and then I got into tech, and I was working with a variety of startups in the Bay Area. And as I started to succeed in sales, I was asked to move into management. And what I learned about being a manager was I was really good at kind of the leadership and development side. I liked working with people to accomplish their goals. And as I progressed through management, I started seeing that I was spending less and less time with my people. I was in spreadsheets, I was in conference rooms and meetings, I was fighting fires. And so I realized if I continued up that chain, I wasn't going to get to do the things that really lit me up and that I enjoyed doing. And so that led me to seek out what else I could do where I would work with people and help them accomplish their goals, but wouldn't be necessarily responsible for managing their day to day. And that's what led me into finding coaching. And I've been doing that for about 5 or 6 years now.
Awesome stuff. I've mentioned this in a few different conversations. I think I may have mentioned it on the show a few times in the past too. So audience already know this, but I'm moving towards coaching myself. Right now I'm reading the Coactive Coaching book. Kate, that model is something that you are trained in, right? Coactive coaching is where your credentialing lies when it comes to coaching, right?
It does.
The
Yes.
one of the interesting things that I was reading about in the book lately is that we think about coaching as something that coaches do, obviously, but in management, you can often end up doing coaching, right? Was that something that you noticed yourself doing a lot?
I didn't notice it right off the bat. I just thought it was conversational. I think one of the thing that you learn in sales is the importance of asking good questions. And that is the same thing that comes up in coaching. Is it's not about what I know, what I think, what I believe. It's about what my client knows, what my client thinks, what my client believes. And my job is to help them really uncover what that is, get clear on it, and have awareness around how that's impacting what's going on for them. And so as a manager, that was absolutely my job, is to understand my people and to make sure that they felt seen and heard and understood. I just at the time didn't really realize that that was coaching. Um, and I think that's a good takeaway for everybody, that, a good coach isn't just on as a coach, right? That's a skill you can take to all of your relationships to increase their effectiveness and to make people feel really great.
That's a theme that kind of has come through the show as like an underlying thing in a lot of these conversations. And I'm glad that you put a point on it, because I'm not sure we've paused enough over the course of the last previous 24 episodes to point that out, that coaching is something that can happen in all kinds of relationships. It's not just in those professional labeled coaching relationships that these things happen. Can you take us into this topic? We've got this title of Transition and the Power of Belief. You had mentioned what people believe about things a second ago, and obviously you've been through your own transition. Transitions are an experience in life. They're a common thing. What's the role of belief in that?
Yeah. Well, I have been through my fair share of transitions. I feel like for a long time I was moving every couple of years. I was changing jobs. I was constantly growing. And I was finding that there were certain patterns that would come up, like certain challenges I would face, or at a certain point in a career, I would say, this isn't doing it. And what I realized is that after some self-reflection was I had certain beliefs that I was holding that were kind of manifesting what those situations would be. And I've now seen that that is also the case for a lot of my clients. So one thing that bonds me to a lot of my clients is oftentimes a belief that we have to give our full selves to something in order to be successful. Or one client even articulated it that they have to give 110%. And then they came to me and they didn't understand why they were burned out. Well, when we uncovered that belief, it made a lot of sense, because how can you give 110% to everything? So uncovering this idea of what it is that you believe and how that's manifesting in your life can really help clear the playing field for what you want to do next and how you want to change. Because a lot of people will think that it's in our actions that we make these changes, but it really starts first in what we believe to be possible. And once we're clear on that, then the actions can kind of start to happen on their own, or it can be clear what actions we need to take and what we need to choose to do in order to really get through things. And when it comes to transitions are just full of so much uncertainty. It can be really daunting to figure out what those actions need to be, or to even just think about what's possible. So going back to what it is that we believe and what really feels true to us, because that's the core of a belief, is something that we believe to be true or that does exist. When you can go back and root yourself in that, it clears up some of that uncertainty.
As you're talking about that, I can't help but think about perfectionism, right?
Mhm.
I know a lot of us struggle with that. Audience, you guys, any of you ever struggle with perfectionism? I mean, I'll raise my hand first. All right, Kate's right behind me. What do you transitions are by nature a messy time.
Yeah.
What's the role of perfectionism in that? Like, how does it end up in play during roles of transition?
Mm. Well, for everybody, it depends. Oftentimes, I think that perfectionism can play a big role at the beginning in paralyzing us before even making a change. There are so many people that'll think, oh, I can't make this change until I'm 100% ready. Or I won't leave this job that I hate until I have found the absolute perfect role. And so it stops us from even trying. And so that's one area that I see where you can talk about, okay, well, do you believe that something better is possible? If not, then maybe that's the chance to just say, okay, I'm not going to try and I'm just going to let myself be there, be content with that. I'm not going to make a change right now. Um, and sometimes that works for people, right? Just having the permission to say, this stinks right now, and that's okay. Maybe there isn't anything better. I'm just going to accept it. Or being able to say, what does perfect really look like? Because we can have this idea of 10, 12 attributes, but in reality, maybe only 2 or 3 would really make that like perfect situation. And so getting clear on what that real outcome looks like and having that visualization of it can help break through some of that perfectionist tendency where it gets really grandiose and can make it more concrete.
I like your point about the different aspects of what it takes to make something perfect, right? Because I know for me, like I don't just want things to be perfect; I want them to be perfectly perfect, right? Like
And
you
how's
just
that
keep
working for you?
adding, right? Oh yeah, it's not working very well, right? You just keep adding all these different aspects of it, and you think of new things all the time. Well, here's one more thing I need to work on. Here's one more thing to work out on, and all of that comes down to perspective, right? Yeah, they're unattainable, right?
Yeah.
um this is a perspectives game, right? Like we have to work on what we're seeing, why we're seeing it, and questioning whether or not that's even true, right?
Mhm.
Or to your point about how many of those points do you need to line up perfectly? To what extent do we need to hang on to all of those things? When you're working with clients, do you have particular methods or frameworks or tools that you like to use to help folks with their perspective when it comes to that?
Yeah, it definitely depends on what type of person they are. A lot of my clients will come in with a clear understanding of their values already. And so I like to start there oftentimes and help them to figure out, okay, if you do know what your core values are, can you actually define those and describe what they are and what they mean? Because a lot of times we'll come in thinking we really value something specific and then can realize that there's more nuance to it, or that our values are kind of fighting against one another, and that's what's causing tension. And when you get clear on what those values look like, that is an easy way to also look at what your beliefs are, in terms of what are the assumptions that you're making around those values. Like for me, one of my big values is no, I'm just losing prosperity. That's what I was thinking about. Right, it's prosperity. And for so long, it drove me to make a lot of money. But the assumption that I was making was that money was the leading indicator of prosperity. Whereas when I started to realize that I was making that, I could change my perspective to what else is included in prosperity. And now I look at it from a very holistic sense. Am I healthy? Am I happy? Am I satisfied? Am I loved? Can I pay my bills? And so now that it includes all of that, that was a shift in my perspective. It didn't change what I valued, but it changed how I valued it and how I was also looking at how that showed up in my life. And it created a sense of more fulfillment without having to actually change any aspect of my identity and my value system.
I often get the sense that a lot of those beliefs we have become circular in nature. Like we believe something, but we end up at a point kind of believing it because we think we ought to believe it, right? We've decided that it's a value somewhere along the way, and we either have a cloudy understanding of it or we don't, or we've just gotten it wrong, right? Like the thing with money, right? That prosperity is important, but it's not what you think it is. How much do you think we have to be on guard about the enculturation that we've got. I mean, we're here streaming to YouTube and LinkedIn right now in the social media sphere. This is an environment where there's a lot of pressure to believe certain things. How much awareness do you think we need to build around watching how our beliefs are shaped?
Well, you use the term on guard, and that stands out to me because I think that this idea of having to constantly stay on top of it almost creates opposition to it, where in reality, we can use this to our advantage. So, my focus is really on intentionality and focusing on what is the intent behind what you're thinking, what you're doing, how you're feeling, what you're wanting, and getting in tune with what aligns to that intention that you can set. And so it's less about what beliefs are flawed or maybe what's ingrained and what am I just kind of unconsciously manifesting versus like, how can I be conscious of this? How can I set an intention that feels really good and feels really possible? And then allow myself to lean into that and trust. To me, that creates an ease of life as opposed to some of that challenge that can be, bumping up against it, trying to change things unnecessarily, or just picking at maybe what isn't working versus really focusing and trusting what is.
Do you find that some of us get blocked on completely understanding or accepting our values because of judgments that we have in mind? And I ask that because one of the things in the book I was reading was talking about how when we look at values, the first thing we need to do is accept them as neutral, that values are not good or bad. So you're not trying to get to know yourself so that you can say, oh, I'm a bad person or I'm a good person. I'm too driven. Like you just need to identify that so that you can learn what your values are and kind of lean into them in ways that help you grow. How much do you think self-judgment or prejudgment gets in the way of that?
A lot. Yeah, especially with high achievers, a lot of times we're driven by the negative. And I think it was Bell Hooks that, and I'll paraphrase here, but said that we have a human tendency to believe that negative things are more true than positive. And so I do think that there's a lot of criticism, self-judgment that we use that can block us from changing a belief or believing in things that are more empowering than disempowering. But it just really comes first with awareness and understanding of it and allowing that to be that sometimes that's okay to be driven by the negative side, or sometimes it's okay to keep ourselves safe and to keep ourselves from acting or trying to strive for more. That is okay. Periods of rest, periods of just being content with what is, those are okay. And those can actually be really great for fostering a better connection with ourselves, for focusing on other things that are important to us. And so I don't think that it's anything to be feared. It's just something to be aware of.
When, we've got these negative things or things
Yeah.
that we've labeled as negative. What are some ways you think that we can leverage those, almost befriend them when we're in points of transition?
Mm-hmm. I'd say one of my favorite questions is what else could be true? And looking at that,
Yeah.
I have a lot of clients who were laid off this year and had a variety of different reactions to those layoffs. But a lot thought that it was a measure of their value. And so asking them, okay, if you believe that this is a mark on your abilities, what else could be true? And just start telling me everything. And suddenly they could list 10, 12, 13 other things. Market changes, challenging dynamics, just random, right? That this is random and has nothing to do with them. And so looking at what else could be possible there and what else feels true is a great way to already start to foster that change in energy that can take you from negative to neutral or neutral to positive.
Sam, glad you made it. I love that we are talking about perspectives as Sam joined, because Sam and I like to talk about different stories and perspectives and kind of storytelling, and
Mhm.
how so many of us get stuck in one moment, and we need to find ways to get out of that moment and look at things a different way. And Kate, I love it too. Like, what else could be true is such a simple question, but it's very open. And part of what we need to do is have an openness about asking these questions. Um, do you have with any clients any kind of favorite moments that you can share with us where you've like seen a perspective shift around a story?
Hmm. That's a great question. I was recently working with a client who's considering changing jobs and um, has changed jobs quite a bit. They change jobs about every 18 to 24 months. And they came to me specifically wanting to talk about have they committed career suicide.
Ooh.
And yeah, you want to talk about a negative belief and something that's charged around it. They had a very clear perspective. And that was impacting everything else that they were doing. It was impacting how they felt in their personal life and how they were engaging with their spouse and their children because they felt this idea of kind of this failure. It was impacting how they were showing up in future interviews because that was what they were leading with is this job change idea, as opposed to leading with their strengths or the value that they brought. And it was impacting the change that they were willing to make in their career because they almost felt like they just didn't deserve another shot. And so I thought this was a really important thing to point out where all of this impact was showing up. And what was interesting is once we actually kind of acknowledged the role that that was playing, they were really able to kind of let that go, and to realize that that one shift could make a big impact and that it wasn't about finding that next job. It was more about first grieving what had happened, and letting themselves kind of wallow in that and understand why they'd come to feel that way and accept that. And then getting to that point where they can choose that next kind of guiding belief. And it happened very quickly. Once they had the grief, the next belief presented itself pretty fast. And that's what I think is great about doing some of this work is it doesn't have to be forced. It doesn't have to be a very prescriptive process. If you can lean into it and allow yourself to be part of that process, it unfolds very naturally. And then this person was a marketer. And so once they had this kind of grieving session, once they had an idea of what this new belief was that was going to lead them, then they were really able to craft an empowering story about what their career trajectory has been, and the value that they provide. And it was just a night and day change in one session from feeling really disempowered and kind of down and out to feeling capable again, to feeling confident and ready to make that next move, in a better direction.
Wow, I love it. Nadine does too. Yeah, that's a great story. I'm glad you shared that with us. There's one of the things that's making me think about is we were talking about perfectionism earlier, and now we're talking about, that there's this process you move through, and that part of that is pausing to grieve the change that's happening. Transition always, almost
Mhm.
always involves some sense of loss. And for perfectionists, I think the trap a lot of us fall into is that we get concerned with the goal at the end of the transition. Like we're only focused on that. So let me try this one on. Tell me what you think about this one, right? So maybe we should shift our perspective on our perfectionism. Instead of letting our perfectionism tell us we need to get to the goal, we need to complete the transition, find the new job, what we should let our perfectionism do is help us do the full process
Hmm.
more perfectly, including the grieving and the letting go. How does that feel?
Yeah. Well, I mean, how does it feel for you? I think is the question because it sounds like this applies directly to an experience that you're having.
Oh yeah. Oh, well, I think lots of them. I know, for me and well, I mean, I'll say even in the midst of this kind of, I've been in limbo for several years, right? I'm a stay-at-home dad. I don't have a career right now. I did higher ed, I did degrees. Now I'm kind of trying to find my footing to get into something new.
Mhm.
There's a tension that I feel personally between, well, I want to be there, right? Like I need to have some certifications, I need to have some clients, and I need to have, checks that I'm cashing or whatever, right? Um, but then there's this other part of me that says no to that. And it's like, no, 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 no. I need to like move more slowly through this. Um, let, let me give you a fun example of this I was noticing in myself yesterday. So I'm reading this book, and we see these things on social media where people will post their list of 300 books that they read last week, right? And I can't keep up.
Super
I can never
realistic.
keep up. I know I can never keep up with these lists. It's always too many books. Because I like to read, but I don't read very quickly. And as I was reading my book yesterday, day before, whatever, I got up like 3 times within like a 10-minute span to go over to the computer and like take some notes on something that it
Mhm.
had made me think about. And I felt guilty for a moment because I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like I'm never going to finish this book. Like I want to have this book done by the end of this month. And I got, like there's only a few days left. Like time is ticking. But then I had to catch myself and say, well, wait. What's important here? Is it the process of going through the reading and actually learning and being in dialogue with the authors of the book and what they're trying to teach me? Or is it about, putting a check mark on a list that I'm going to put into a carousel and I'm going to throw up on Canva, or,
Yeah.
and yeah, those tensions are real.
Yeah. And that's beautiful. I want to celebrate the fact that you stepped back and looked at that, because I think that goes right back to my point around intention. What was the intention in first picking up the book, in reading it, and then in how you wanted to feel about it? The intention is for a check mark. Well, you can define reading a book by reading a page or two and finishing it. It's totally up to you. I know there's probably a lot of people who who do that, who to get through 300 books, it's not ingesting the full book and integrating it in. And if that is what it is for you, that's great. That's fine. There's no judgment there. And if it is really intentionally reading that book and taking it in, then there may not be a timeline on it. And you won't get through 300, but that's okay. You'll learn what you need to learn.
Right. It reminds me of Brian Berman, who's been on the show and who I reference from time to time, and who a lot of us here in the audience know. He has a thing he's fond of saying when talking about coaching is that it's not about deadlines, it's about milestones, right? It's not about saying,
Mhm.
well, I have to do this by, November 1st, right? It's about saying, this is the next change I need to see
Yeah.
in my life. This is the next thing I need to do. So those milestones are better markers often than the deadlines.
Yeah.
Kate, we are fast approaching the end of our time. As is often the case, it goes quickly.
I'm literally shutting the lights off. I don't know if you saw that change. My
I
computer's like,
know.
"You're
Listen.
done."
So I waited tables for a very long time, and I used to be a cocktail waiter. So I would work like the bar shift at the end of the night, and the changing the lights was always a sign. Turning them on,
Yep.
turning them off, whatever. It's always a sign. So point taken. We got to wrap it up. A couple of things. Tell us, what is the best way for everybody to get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
Well, the best way is right here on LinkedIn. This is where I am most active. So you can find me. My handle is Kate Turner 9. And I love to connect. I'm open to any and all conversations, and I want to hear other people's opinions. I also have a website, kateturnercoaching.com, and that is where you can schedule free consultations. And I also have a lot of links to my other media outlets there as well.
Good stuff. The last thing that we'll do is, I do this every week. I'm going to turn all you guys in the audience off. Sorry, everybody. I'm going to turn me off too, so don't feel bad. Kate, I'm going to let you have the full screen. Take about a minute or so and give us one takeaway that you want us to remember, and then I'll come back in and we'll sign off.
Okay. Well, when focusing on the power of belief, what I would recommend is really focusing on what are things that you can wholeheartedly believe to be true or possible. If you're trying on a new belief and it just doesn't feel 100%, then focus on the ways that you can change that just so slightly to feel that it is. And that will make a huge difference in how it manifests in the rest of your life.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. Nadine, Sam, Joa, Amber, everybody, thank you for being here. I'll be back next week. We've got 2 episodes left. Next week will be a Movember kickoff. I have a guest from earlier in the season who's going to be back to hang out with me. And then after that, we'll have one final episode where I'll do kind of an AMA and thank everybody. Kate, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. It's been a pleasure, and I hope all of you have a great Wednesday.
Thank you. You too.